Welcome to GymCastic, the #1 gymnastics podcast in the galaxy. This week we have something very special for you.
Please enjoy our recap of the finest film in history of all cinema, the 1986 sports classic, American Anthem, starring Mitch Gaylord and some other people. It's great. And by great, I mean it's not.
This was recorded April 1st, 2020, but it is not an April Fool's joke. Please enjoy American Anthem, the recap by GymCastic.
He does a full into murder.
A full in directly connected to murder. But then in the very next scene, we see him and he has like a single Band-Aid on his eyebrow. And it's like, how did this happen? You were dead a second ago. I thought this movie was just about to get good, and he killed his coach with a TRIFFUS.
Welcome to GymCastic. Warning. This podcast discusses gymnastics in a frank and adult manner.
So you might hear a naughty word or two.
Today, something to lift your spirits. The most sex-positive, athlete-centered, Kathy Johnson choreographed, extremely white, high bar in the woods having revelation of a gymnastics movie, 1986's American Anthem. Not a practical joke. We're really recapping American Anthem and giving your thoughts.
This movie is a practical joke. I think it's an elaborate prank.
Welcome to the #1 gymnastics podcast in the universe. I'm Jessica and I'm here with Spencer from the Balance Beam Situation.
This episode was recorded 2 weeks into the pandemic lockdown in the US before we had video podcasts. To understand this movie, really, you don't need to know anything about the plot at all. It's totally unimportant. You can enjoy this recap without knowing anything about what actually happens in the movie, except you need to know what purvising is. This was pre-purvis, maybe the origin of the purvis, named after the great gymnast, who is an Olympic and world medalist, who fell sideways off the vault mat, off the podium, onto a judge's lap one time. And that's what purvising is.
If you haven't, first of all, if you have not seen the film American Anthem, something is missing in your life, because it is an important rite of passage in the gymnastics world. So, just in case you haven't, the year was 1986, 2 years after the 1984 Olympics, and Mitch Gaylord won 4 medals at that Olympics, including being part of the team gold medal. So basically what we had 2 years later, Mary Lou is already Mary Lou famous. And they were like, the celebrity apparatus, big fame, was like, shouldn't Mitch Gaylord be more famous than Mary Lou? Because he's like also has a bunch of medals and he's like hot in an 80s way, by 80s standards.
I feel like he was the second sex symbol of gymnastics.
Yeah. So they were like, shouldn't he be famous? And the public was like, boo, men's gymnastics, no. And so it didn't happen, but they tried. And the try was called American Anthem, which is a real movie that was made. Can you believe it? It's also one of the worst received films in cinema history. Mitch was nominated for a Razzie for this glorious performance. It's almost surprising when you cast a bunch of gymnasts to do acting that they're not good at it. I'm shocked by this news. But see, for me, I only saw this movie as a grown-up person. Jessica, you lived this movie, richly lived it.
Yes. Would you like to read the text message I sent you about it?
Yes, because I texted Jessica something like, wow, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And she responded, when I was in middle school, man, 6 N's, this was hot shit. And I was like, was it though?
Yes,
or did you just like, you
was.
like it.
No.
You liked it. And then you told everyone else to like it. And they were like, and you were like, everyone likes it.
Now, let me talk you through what it was like as a middle schooler. How old was I? 12 when this came out. So, yeah, I watched this many times. I also acknowledged with my best gymnastics friend, T. We watched it many times, and we also laughed at it. But we also watched it many, many, many times. Because it was like Nadia or this, and that was all you had. So,
Or like, other movies, but like who would ever?
Right. Well, we'd already watched like Pretty in Pink and Breakfast Club 170 times, and we had them memorized. So my childhood impressions of this, let me just tell you,
please do,
were that the coach, who was like an Ivich, like Russian Eastern Bloc, he's supposed to be like terrible. So this is the height of the Cold War. Like we're still afraid of being bombed, nuclear bombs at any time. And so like as a kid, I thought he was horrible and like the worst person in the entire world. And I just thought he was so bad. And then I also thought Becky Cameron was a total bitch with her short hair and being mean to the new girl.
As we know, short hair means you're the bad guy.
Even though I had the exact same haircut as Becky Cameron. Thank you very much. And a perm. So, of course I had a perm. So, I remember just being like, really we watched it because Midge Gaylord. Like, he's really not my type, but at age 12, I could watch him. Like, it was no problem. Also, Janet Jones, the actress who plays the gymnast, who's a dancer in real life, so hot and ridiculously hot. And normally, I'm just saying, she's hot. In the 80s, she's super hot. Can we just? I'm sorry, Spencer. They were both very hot. Their makeout scenes were too short. This is what me and T thought. Right. Like, you barely got to see anything. We were watching Dirty Dancing. We got a lot more in that. So, anywho. So, watching this, like, I remember watching this many times. I remember laughing at it, but I remember, like, really enjoying it and making fun of it and trying some of the routines and, like, being goofy and, it was fun. But, we also recognized what it was. As an adult watching this, I don't remember, it's probably been 20 years since I watched this, 15 years at least. It's been a really long time. I didn't think the coach was that bad, actually.
Oh, no, yeah.
Not all what I remembered. Like,
it's not true to life. If he's supposed to be like the Bella of this movie.
He's not. Also... Like, yeah.
He's like the idea of what Bella was supposed to be. It was like avuncular fishing grandpa. Yeah.
Right. Oh, the boat, right? Like, he had to have a boat. Oh, yeah. They all hunt and fish.
Like, we have a lot.
So much to discuss, you guys. So anyway, as an adult watching this, so the coach was not that bad. Becky was just trying to tell Janet that her bad attitude was taking down the team and reflecting. And she did have a bad attitude. But at the time, I could not see that was the truth. Becky was just telling the truth. And I couldn't see it as a kid.
Becky's the hero of this movie, as far as I'm concerned.
She really is. That's the thing. But as a kid, I was like, oh, she's such a bitch. I really didn't think. I don't think I called women bitches when I was 12, but I thought that Julie was really the hero of the whole story, but really it's like women supporting women is the hero of the story. That's actually who wins. Also, this is the best. Let me in the pantheon of gymnastics productions.
Okay.
And
what a lovely group it is.
Right? So we have very few gymnasts who play a character and are also a gymnast. Like, you get people who do not look like athletes at all. There is nothing about them that is athletic. They do not, it's not just like not like a gymnast. Like, they don't look athletic, period. And then they're trying to play a character who's supposed to be an elite gymnast. And it's so embarrassing. And every time the stunt person comes in, the stunts might be great, but you're like,
why did you change body type?
Right. Why do you look completely different? Oh, like, it's so obvious.
You developed a lot of muscles in that cut.
Is that a lifetime of leg muscles you just... Yeah. So the thing that I appreciate about this is the gymnasts looked like gymnasts because they were gymnasts.
Yeah.
And even Janet Jones, like, they chose someone who's a dancer, and so she pulled off her parts, and her stunt double, who is Michelle Doucier. Doucier?
I think you're making it more French than it is.
I'm trying to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
She was her, and I thought that they really went very seamlessly together. They did such a good job. And it may also be because Kathy Johnson was the gymnastics advisor on this.
Very important.
Obviously. And also because Kathy Johnson did the choreography. Oh, I'm doing the body roll right now.
The beam body. You doing the beam body roll?
The beam body roll, the floor body roll, the body roll, all over the body roll. That was a move in the 80s. Let me just tell you. I mean, it's always a move, but...
in Jessica's life, that's still a move.
So, I just appreciated that it was real gymnasts. They look like gymnasts. And like Becky wasn't terrible. Stacey Maloney
wasn't terrible at what?
Well, I mean, like for the movie, for what it was, like in terms of the worst actors, like Will should rank the actors.
Oh, you're so nice.
Okay, I am, because I'm ranking
they all get
this,
0.
I'm ranking this in the pantheon of gymnastics movies and TV shows.
Still. But I will say that professional actors in this movie are just as bad as the gymnasts. There's no difference in acting ability between any of them.
I mean, that's pretty true, actually. I also remember as a kid, I was so furious. Like, me and T, I remember us watching this and just being like, there's no spotlights, yelling at the TV. There's no spotlights at gymnastics. And I held that for many, many years until I learned about what Europe does. And yes, there are spotlights and people do compete under spotlights. But I was so annoyed that a national championship would have spotlights. And I still contend.
I'm still annoyed by that.
I have now converted completely to the other side because I do not want to see those little brats waving at the camera in the stands. So the whole audience should be completely dark. No one needs to see them. And you should just light the floor where the gymnasts are. So,
as long as it's not that year in Baku where no one could see the apparatuses.
Right, and everyone fell on bars because it was
you couldn't see the low bar from the high bar.
It was lit like a nightclub. Looking back on this movie, there are things I appreciate it now that I have seen many more gymnastics TV shows and movies mostly that had much better acting, but I appreciated that the gymnasts looked like gymnasts because they were gymnasts, which is always one of the things that bothers me, especially like Make It or Break It. I'm just like, you guys really, you couldn't find any actors that had like done a push-up in their whole life. Like, come on.
Yeah. Also, the movie is like long.
It's so long.
It's an hour and 41 minutes, and it's a hard hour and 41 minutes.
When we got to the final meet, I was like, oh my God, wait, did they go to national championships? I mean, they go to worlds after this? This is the end, right? Oh my God, it's still going on? Yeah.
Yeah, if you have not seen it before, and based on our illustrious podcast, or choosing to watch this movie, which I highly recommend, like, allow yourself several sittings because you're probably not going to get through it in one.
I didn't. I needed several sittings.
Yeah, it's odd.
Well, also because I was making my notes the entire time, but yeah, it's a...
Right, you have... I mean, an important part of watching it is pausing to make fun of it, so it's going to take, like, at least 3 times as long as the actual running time of the movie just to get through it and be like, wait, let's talk about this scene. So let's talk about some of those scenes, Jessica.
Let's do that.
We'll begin by taking you through the cast of characters.
The racism? Should we talk about the racism to start?
Sure. You want to? Let's go.
Mitch Gaylord as Steve Taveri. So that's supposed to be an Italian name, right? The Italians are the trashy ones that have the domestic abuse in the family. And there is not a person of color. Like, I kept making my notes that were there's still no one of color. Oh, there's no one of color in the gym. Nope, there's still no one. There's still no one. There's still no one. Oh, now we finally there's even motorcycle gangs, but not a person of color. And because we're branching out into all levels of society except anyone of color. And then we get to, you don't see anyone until the final meet of the entire movie. Do we see a person of color? And then I actually found 2. I found an extra. But yeah. So I didn't.
I thought you were going to go to the way Lee Yue-chu is treated in this movie, the one Asian person in this film who plays like the good gymnast at nationals. And then like our main characters are super racist toward him. And that's supposed to be like, oh, these are the good guys.
Okay, but explain the racism to him, towards him from...
the assumption that he doesn't speak English, so they have to like do sign language to him in like broken voices.
Interesting.
Did you catch this part?
I didn't.
It's a lot.
I didn't actually.
He finishes second, and to like Stacey Maloney finishes first. He's like, me, 1, you, 2, and it's like.
Well, okay, so I agree. I'm not going to say that it's not racism.
I can't believe you weren't like shocked by this scene.
The thing that I like about the interaction is there's so much shit talking, but I assumed it's because they're on opposite sides of the gym, so they clearly can't talk to each other. That's why Weiju starts with the like, you choked thing after high bar. Like, it's totally mutual back and forth. But I will not rule out that, that it's totally racist. But I thought it was because they're across the gym. They're not like sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
And Weiju started it.
By smiling, sure. They also have him playing a very much of a type, like how Asian characters were in 1980s movies.
True. That is very
true. Which is like very cartoonish. Yes.
He is, though, actually like that in real life. So that's the thing. He never stops smiling. He has 100% a smile like plastered on his face. Like, he didn't do any acting in that. Like, that's... and anyone... Yeah, anyway. But I will totally leave it open to being super racist anyway. Like, I just couldn't believe how there was no one of color in this movie until the very end.
You couldn't believe it? It was a movie from the 80s.
I know, but like...
You've seen some of them,
But
right?
there's always one token someone. What about Goonies? But it was
I feel like movies of this genre, like the ones it's trying to emulate, it's all white people in all of them.
That's true. Or there's like the one... I mean, yeah. I mean, it didn't surprise me, but it also was shocking to revisit, I guess I should say. Like, wow, it really is that bad. Anyway, so I feel like Steve Treveri was supposed to be an Italian character, and the Italians are the trashy family in the 80s. Like, that's how they're being portrayed.
I didn't read that into it at all.
I for sure did.
This is very interesting.
And maybe I read it into it coming from a half Italian family. That is how I totally read into it.
And I come from it from wishing I were Asian. So that's where I come from, to my perspective on this movie. What were we talking about?
Oh, yeah. Racism, the Italian racism. So let's talk about Steve Treveri, Mitch Gaylord.
Steve Treveri. Right. He plays a former football star / elite gymnast. Because you know how like people do that both at the same time. Common. Like he's gonna get a college scholarship to play football, but he's also like an elite. And he had to quit both. We join the action. He's already quit both because of mysterious broken arm. Spoiler alert, his dad broke his arm, and we think that's fine, apparently, according to this movie.
The most important thing about this movie is it's very true to form in that even though there's clearly safe sport violations on many fronts, not to mention that everybody knows that there's a domestic violence situation and this dad has broken his son's, like, adult son's arm, no one calls the police. No one calls the police. The mom just watches. It's all fine.
And then how is right with like the moral of the story is like it's okay because the dad had a rough life. We're going to talk about the problems with domestic abuse in this movie
much to discuss
for a while. So my theory about this movie is that this was the script. I'm putting script in quotes, was originally about football, and it was just sitting around, and there was like this terrible script about like a former football star with a broken arm and that no one wanted to make, and then they changed it to make it about gymnastics when they were like, oh, we need a gymnastics movie, because there's a lot of like memories of playing football that like not for no reason. It doesn't amount to anything. It's not related to the plot at all. It's just like, remember that time you played football? Yep. Okay, let's talk about gymnastics again.
I think they had Footloose was a huge success, and it was about a gymnast who moved to a town where dancing was outlawed. And also a fantastic 80s movie. And so there's a whole gymnastics scene in a warehouse in that where he just can't anymore and he has to dance. And so he goes to the warehouse and he puts his music on and he gymnastics and dances through the warehouse. And I feel like they were like, oh my God, we have this really hot dude, hotter than Kevin Bacon, who starred in Footloose. And let's create a vehicle for him.
Yes.
Here we go.
Oh, they're definitely trying to make this down to
Footloose.
the font.
Right.
Down to like the font and the mood and everything. They're trying to remake it. It's just extremely terrible.
Yeah, it's not a good movie. But it's fun.
It was a fun watch. He has like football trophies in his bedroom that have, wait for it, literal cobwebs on them to symbolize his rotting dreams. That's sort of the level of thematic nuance and subtlety we're working with here. The trophies in his bedroom are covered in cobwebs. There's also, okay, I have to say, many times in this film, there are like close-ups of his face while he's on the bed, like breathing hard and having sweaty memories. And it's like, are you masturbating to memories of yourself playing football? Like, that's never explicitly said, but it's like, that's what's happening in the scene, right? Like, you're remembering your football glory days and, like, having a little personal time about it. That's what I read into it.
I mean, that's why they started the bronze the way they did. The very first scene, it's just a copy. It's just an homage to American Anthem. He does have a lot of sweaty dreams. And you guys, there's a lot of backlighting. Before we go further, can we just take a moment for the backlighting? So,
please do.
In the 80s, everyone.
This is a really good history lesson.
It is. In the 80s, if you didn't have your hair puffy enough, like high enough off of your head, so that there could be an electric blue light behind you that would shine through your hair, a blue backlit, like you didn't even exist. I mean, you might as well have just crawled into a hole. If you didn't have that shine of blue light, neon, because that was the theme of the 80s, neon. It was just like, give up and go home. And so I'm so glad that the other subtext of this entire movie is basically an homage to 80s lighting in every single music video that was ever made during that time.
Most of this movie is a music video, which is probably for the best because then no one has to talk. But it's like 75% montages.
This is true.
But things are not going well for Mitch Gaylord. It's kind of because of the broken arm, but we're told it's because his dad lost his job as, like, foreman of the work factory, I guess. Like, all we see is just this empty warehouse, and he's, like, looking at a safety helmet that's covered in dust and says foreman on it to tell you that he was the foreman, and now he doesn't have this job anymore. And instead of that, he has to try to learn 80s computers, which is a truly beautiful little side story. We have two scenes of this computer, and the way, like, clearly no one involved in this movie had ever seen a computer before at this point. That is a given, because he is like typing at 1 mile per, and the like text on the computer says no at no ellipses, because he's typed the wrong thing apparently into the computer's machine. It's truly wonderful.
The very sweet moment we have, though, is when Mitch Gaylord is trying to defend his dad, who has just broken his arm, because, but this is the important lesson in this, is that he can't break the cycle of violence because he's just making an excuse for his abuser to abuse him, who happens to be his father. It's that it's really hard for him to learn because it's been a year since he got laid off. A year, and he still hasn't learned computers.
No, he's had a year to learn learn what computer do, and it's not going great.
So it's okay if he needs to break his son's arm every once in a while.
Because he's had a rough go, and he has to try to learn computer things.
And ultimately, it's okay if someone breaks your arm because they're just having a hard time and feelings. And if you just express your feelings, it's okay for them to continue to abuse you. So this is very in line with 80s gymnastics culture.
Yes. So we also have Steve has a job now because he's not doing school and he's not doing gymnastics. So he has to have a job at like man sweating warehouse. Like his job is just an excuse for him to be like in a tank top, biceps, sweating. And it's just
the beginning of Magic Mike.
Right. They basically like this what this business is, I have no idea.
It's
I think
Flashdance.
They make sparks there. It's just like there's like he's like trying to there's a tire and he's like welding a tire to a toaster and it's like, is this a job? Probably. And there's just a lot of sparks. So it's like he works at the sparks store basically, and they just do sparks and then there's like an ATV sitting there or something. It's like, okay, this is probably work.
Oh my god! I just realized that this is the beginning of Flashdance too. It's like her welding, right? So this
I've seen these movies, Jessica.
You haven't seen Flashdance?
No.
Spencer, how can you appreciate bad movies?
How can I appreciate?
If you haven't watched Flashdance. It's so important. You really should do, you guys, someone commission Spencer to do a Flashdance recap because if you think this is bad, wait till you see Flashdance. But also the dancing is amazing in Flashdance. So we got pretty good gymnastics in this when Weiju went. But
my preferred genre of bad movies to go back and watch is late 90s to early 2000s teen horror movies.
Oh,
that is my just wonderful, tragic, horrible movies genre to go back to, and I highly recommend it to everyone.
No, skip that. Don't do what Spencer says.
Oh no, you should do it. It's great. Also, at the Sparks store, he takes his own cast off. He has the broken arm, and he's doing a lot of like looking at tools, and then the other people who work there also look at the tools, and then suddenly they're like taking his cast off, and it's like, oh, we don't have doctors in this town. Just decide when it's done. Take it off.
Because he's a bad boy. He's a bad boy. But he's not such a bad boy that he doesn't have good friends in the motorcycle gang. Because before he can cut that cast off himself, his good friend, motorcycle gang man with the beard, takes the saw away from him and does it for him. Like, you jokester, I've got it.
Another like very underdeveloped part of this movie that they address for like 1 second and then never do anything with or explain is this idea that like he's part of the motorcycle gang and they're like breaking into the stuffy world of gymnastics. Like there's that scene where the whole motorcycle gang appears at the competition and then all of the hoity-toity gymnastics people are like hub, motorcycle leather. But they never do anything with that. It's just one moment and it's never addressed again. This whole movie is just like one moment of something happens and then no one talks about it ever again.
This is my favorite part about this is what constituted antisocial behavior in the 80s. So you had to be Italian with an abusive drunk father who was abusing you. And then you had to have chewing gum. Very big with the chewing gum. Chewing gum, like Jay Clark at a gymnastics meet, is like
did this movie invent Miss Val?
Maybe it did. This is her. I mean, she did ride the motorcycle with Mitch Gaylord. She mentions all the time. Side note.
I feel like when she got a job as a gymnastics coach, which she likes to talk about, like, I didn't know anything about gymnastics. She probably watched American Anthem and was like, got it.
Exactly. So antisocial is motorcycle gang, which is kind of like a joke now. I just feel like that's like, you see those, like they're all old men. They're like 70-year-olds now, like people that are in those kind of gangs. So, and then also a motorcycle gang, also a total joke. And then gum chewing, and then smoking and wearing a leather jacket with your collar popped. That's how and then not riding a regular motorcycle, riding a dirt bike. I mean, this guy was really on the edge. I mean, it's not like today where it'd be like heroin and prostitution and covered with tattoos. Like, it's not even covered with tattoos anymore. You'd have to have a neck tattoo. Like, because everyone has a tattoo. It's not even antisocial now. You just have to have it like a face tattoo. That's where it's really like...
You have to have a Nicola Bartolini neck.
Yes, you do. Those are the requirements. So I really enjoyed this movie's take on antisocial.
Yes. But there is a lot, like, he does do a lot of, like, smoking, sitting there wearing a leather jacket to tell you that he's the bad boy. He also spends, like, 90% of his days doing lame parkour to try to sneak into the gym. And it's like, first of all, there's a front door. Like, nobody cares. Like, he spends hours upon hours sitting in, like, climbing over an unnecessary number of roofs to get to this gym, and then, like, sitting there by the window being like, I miss gymnastics.
He basically rappels down off the roof at one point and in through a window. And everyone can see him. He makes eye contact with people, but it's all very, he has to go through.
It's also a secret. Yeah. There's a lot of, like, what excuses can we come up with for him to do something vaguely gymnastics? And it's like, what if he slowly pulls himself down a rope and onto a roof? Dun, 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 gymnastics.
And then how many shots can we create that are basically his modeling shots where we just see him in profile over and over and over and over and over again? Yes.
Yeah. So, playing opposite Mitch Gaylord, I also say that very loosely because the level of they have, like, negative chemistry in this movie.
True.
Like, they turn you watching this movie. There is a scene where Julie Whatever and Mitch Gaylord meet each other for the first time, and it's definitely they were in different locations when this scene was shot. Like, they're not even there for each other's coverage. It's just like they said their lines to a stick. I'm sure of it.
To a stick. The only one that seems like they have actual chemistry, and it's not really chemistry, it's just laughing about how bad the movie is when they're driving in the Jeep. Because a Jeep, also antisocial.
But there's so many Jeeps.
It's just totally, yeah, it's 100% Jeeps. It's also that, like, she's from the city, and the city is bad. It's full of people who just have money but don't care about their kids. But the country is where the wholesome, this is, down to earth, the good people are who drive trucks. So there's a scene where they're both in the Jeep together, and he's like, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Do you want one?" And they both laugh together. And, like, that laugh was the only thing that seemed, like, genuine. Like, this fucking movie to me in the whole thing.
It is an odd cut where I feel like they're definitely laughing about something else, probably real. And they were like, this is the only thing we can use from this entire movie. So we're just going to cut that in the middle of a conversation and just have to be like, like you would.
Before we talk more about Julie's character, can I just talk a little bit about Janet Jones?
Please do.
Okay. And I would just also like to say, like, I really appreciated so many more things watching this movie the second time around than I did as a middle schooler. So that's all. I enjoyed this very much. So Janet Jones was a dancer and in a lot of musical theater all through the 80s. She was in Annie. She was in... a chorus line. She was in Staying Alive, which is a, like, famous disco movie with, there's also a lot of oil. There's a lot of being oiled up in that. So much. She was in A League of Their Own. So she had a long history.
By the way, I looked that up when I saw IMDb because I'm like, no, you weren't in League of Their Own. I would remember. She plays Racine Pitcher, and I'm like, no, you didn't. You did not appear. If you appeared, you had one shot.
Well, she had one shot, but still. She was in Grease, too.
You're not a character.
So I'm just going to say, I appreciate that they hired someone who had theater and dance chops. So you can tell she's a dancer, and it's one of the things that I like about her character. I'm not saying she's the best dancer ever.
You can tell she's not a gymnast because they have, like, a lot of montages where everyone is doing gymnastics and then she's, like, standing on a beam.
Okay, but Make It or Break It versus Janet Jones.
Equal.
No! How dare you, Spencer? Stick It, Lily's Beam versus Janet Jones.
I mean, we'll talk. I want to save a discussion of Stick It because, spoiler alert, we're going to do that one too.
Yes. So everybody that commissioned, your group commissioned for Stick It, it's happening. So it's coming. It's happening, everybody. Yes. Okay. So
anyway, yes, she is from New York, which
Ew.
means she's mean. Like, there's a lot of like saying Park Avenue with a sneer. So like that's bad. Being from New York is bad. And there's like one scene at the beginning where a character, I guess it's supposed to be her mom, is just like throwing clothes out of a suitcase. And again, never explained, never addressed. No one says anything about it. I'm like, what was going on there? But it's just a reference like cold, bad place to be from. So you move to Arizona, which is like a good place to be from, so that you can train with your non-specific Eastern European coach, as we discussed. Like, I have no idea where this man is supposed to be from. Like, it changes from scene to scene, whether he's like, are you from the Soviet Union? Are you from Romania? Are you from Eastern? Like, he's from foreign, basically. And his accent is just like general foreign.
He's from Fakistan. That's clearly established. Also, I love that it's like liberal elites, bad, don't love their children,
right.
But people in the whatever Arizonas do, even though actually
not loving your children is like taking clothes out of a suitcase. Loving your children is breaking their arms in the hallway.
This is clear. Everybody knows that. Duh.
I also, on the topic of the coach, I love the scene where he explains to the gymnasts that they have to compete at nationals, and it takes a while and is brand new information to everyone. There's like this extensive discussion of like, you will go to nationals where the top 20 will advance to the national team, and then only 6 will make it to the world championship. It's like, and everyone is shocked by this information. They were just doing gymnastics. They had no idea why. And then he reveals that there's like a championship that you compete in. Everyone's like, wow, now I've got to buckle down.
And that he's been selected as the head coach. Selected. Mm-hmm.
He was selected as the head coach of the team today. And nationals are like 2 weeks away. And he is also in charge. And there's no conflict of interest. Don't worry about it.
No, it's totally fine. Totally fine.
So anyway, Julie, the dancer, main character. I want to talk about her hair for a while.
I knew you were going to talk about her hair next. Let's discuss.
Because it's like if the concept of electrocution came to life and were a hairstyle. And that's very important. It's its own character. Her hair is its own character. That denim jacket that she wears, it's like 13 feet wide, is its own character because it's the 80s. Like, it makes her head look like it is the size of a little peanut because it is so much wider than her body.
If your shoulders or the shoulders of your garment did not extend at least 2 feet on either side from your body, you could not leave the house. Those were also rules. And also, collars only went up. You never wore them down. That was very embarrassing.
Correct.
Facts.
Yeah. It was like her denim jacket is a really good like geometry lesson. It's the most school anyone did in this entire movie. Like, that's an upside down triangle. I got it.
Yes.
We also have Maria Ons, a real gymnast who plays Becky Cameron, the 1984 NCAA floor champion, went to Florida, can do her own stunts, which is very important. And definitely, as you mentioned, I feel like is the only hero in this tale.
Yes.
Because she's like the only time we are like the only thing that indicates, because she's quote unquote supposed to be the bad guy. The only thing that ever indicates that she's the bad guy is that she and Julie are supposed to like have a private training in the gym on Sunday, you know, like you do when you just go into the gym and vault a while by yourself and you don't break your neck and it's fine. And then Julie doesn't show and she's mad. And it's like, yeah. Correct.
That's
like,
right. Like when someone promises to be there and then they're like a half an hour late and then they're like,
excuse was like, sorry, I was talking to Steve or something like that. Is not
sorry. Translation, sorry, I was having sex. So I didn't want to be here. I'd rather have sex more than work on this thing with you that I promised. In which case, Becky was totally correct to be like, F off, I'm not helping you. Goodbye. Good luck on your own.
Yeah.
Which at the time I thought was she's having sex. Like, it's the best thing ever. Let her live. But obviously, then I grew up. But in middle school, you should be so happy for her asking her all about it. Okay, go ahead.
My favorite Becky Cameron moments are in the first competition of the movie when Julie does floor and she's like, ugh, that was my worst event. And Becky is like, it was really bad. You should get a 9.3 for that routine. I was like, no, Becky, it's really my soul sister. And Julie's like, we're on the same team, aren't we? And then Becky goes, not when you do your floor with that attitude. It's like, truly slow clap worthy.
Yes, it was. And that's where, as a middle schooler, I was like, oh my God, that's so rude. You can't tell someone the truth to their face. That's so rude. And now it's my favorite thing to do. And it's gotten me in lots and lots of trouble over the years.
Excellent. I really need to, if like rights things weren't a problem, which I was having trouble making GIFs of this because it's like, rights protected and you can't do that when you buy movies on iTunes. And then I was like, stupid. I really need just a video of not when you do your floor with that attitude, because I can use that on so many occasions.
Oh my God, that's why you need to rent it on YouTube. Like I
know I needed to do that. I made a bad choice.
It's worth it for all the
I'll
GIFs.
Get through it somehow.
Also, GIFs are basically free publicity for this movie. So I think it should just go under, marketing budget.
Really? I mean, for as much as we're talking about how this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it truly is, this is going to be the most down purchases of this movie they have had in decades. So we're basically promoting this film.
Let me just tell you, when I started watching this, and Coop can attest to this, like I watched the first 10 minutes and I just laughed the whole time. The solid 10 minutes, and Coop was like, I have not heard you giggle consistently in a row watching anything. And I was like, this movie is just amazing. I love it so much. Everything is hilarious. Oh, it's so good. So good. Such good times.
Okay, we need to talk about the best friend. Steve's best friend, who is Stacey Maloney, who coached the Homs at Swiss Turners. If you would like your background gymnast, actual real life things, but this character is just the worst. He's the worst human being in this movie. He is the bad guy, as far as I'm concerned. He basically just exists to throw out like casual homophobia and racism to indicate that he's like the good guy, and he wins nationals, so you're supposed to be happy about it. And you're like, you're the bad guy of this movie. Also, he can't pronounce the word school, and that really bothers me. He says it's ska. He's always like, what about ska? And I'm like, are you saying school? Are you trying to say the word school? Because you're saying ska.
It was very cool to be from the Valley, which is where they make all the porn in California. And I believe, and there was a movie called Valley Girl, which popularized this accent.
You are talking to me like I'm not from accent.
There. I know you are.
World, and that is not accurate.
That is accurate.
You don't.
I'm going to do it. Yeah.
You don't pronounce.
Is that everyone says skull? Yeah, that's totally how you say it.
You just said it much more accurately than he did.
Ska? There.
No, he says ska. It's just ska.
I think they were totally trying to make him into the Valley Boy stereotype surfer blonde guy. And so that's why. Do we agree on that?
We do not.
Fine.
I don't think they were trying to, like, the level is, we don't have, like, personalities or backstories in any of these characters. They were just, like, get the words out somehow. There was no, like, intent. They were just, like, try to put all the words together in a sentence in a single take, and we'll use it.
It's my favorite that you can't stand him, because he's my favorite character in the whole thing.
Even when he calls one of the other gymnasts a pussy.
Right, except that. that was like, oh, you're a total asshole and you should totally go away. And you're basically the Kai. What was it from Karate Kid? I feel like he was supposed to be the guy in Karate Kid too. Also very popular in the 80s. Cobra Kai, the bad dojo. Not like Mr. Miyagi's fun, nice house with the gardens. Cobra Kai were the bad ones that cheated, and I feel like that's who he was supposed to be. Yeah, he's like a dick, but he was also reminding me of every boy that I ever did gymnastics with.
Is that a good thing?
They were horrible. They were so horrible. All they did was like harass us and embarrass us, and like, you know, it was awful, but also very entertaining. And so yeah, I felt like he was really true to life. Like he's that dude on the team who's just like a complete asshole. But my favorite line, because it's so true, is when you know, Mitch Gaylord doesn't get the score that he wants after coming back to gymnastics because he, you know, his dad broke his wrist, and then he had been out for 6 months, and then he just came back with like 2 days of practice and could actually do gymnastics, even though he'd gotten his cast off literally like 24 hours before, and had like grip strength and could do it. It was just ridiculous. And so that he doesn't get the score he wants. And then, so he sits down looking all like, meh. And so Stacey Maloney says to him, "Sit down, asshole. You've been out 6 months." Like, it's the best line. Like, you know, you would totally have that dude on your team who tries to get you to come back, but then also is just like, you're stupid and ridiculous. Like, who do you think you are? Oh my God, I love his character so much.
Another important moment that we have to talk about is the moment where Mitch Gaylord goes to the coach and is like, "I've been out 6 months. I want to come back." And the coach is like, "Compete in this competition that's tomorrow, and then we'll see how it goes to decide whether you can come back to training." It's like, no, just what? Stop.
We all know
is the test for whether you should be training. A given.
We all know Simone wasn't even born when this was made, so that was totally unrealistic, first of all.
Another star turn in this film is Jenny Rowland, at the age of 6 months, playing the other girl at the gym with like an actual afro at this point. She walked so that Daniela Silivas could run. She predicted Daniela Silivas. She is the star of this movie, as far as I'm concerned.
She is unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable. You wouldn't know.
Blonde hair. Yeah, I thought, like, at first from far away, I was like, is that Christy Phillips with, like, more poof? But then it's not. It's Jenny Rowland, head coach of Florida.
Like, I paused it to be like, can I see Jenny Rowland in this face? And I could not.
You can't. She looks...
She's unrecognizable. You would never have known if you didn't know.
Never, never, never in a million years. Looks like a completely different person. And she has so much hair. It's amazing.
There's so much.
Yeah.
I think she might be also the best actor in this movie in that she has no lines.
She's also in what was they also have her in a spotting belt on beam.
Yes.
Which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Because she's doing a series. She's not doing one skill. She's doing a series. And first of all, you never do that on beam because it's impossible to keep your balance while something is pulling you up in the air from two different sides. And there are apparatuses that exist like this, but they're on a track that goes down the beam. Anyway, it's like she's in a spotting belt for trampoline on beam, but it's super cute and it is like an adorable thing. She misses her series and flies off the side of the beam and is like doing a Superman and giggling. And, you know, she's that cute kid in the gym. That's her entire role, is to be the cute kid.
Mm-hmm. And have braces that make it look like she has lipstick on her teeth. I think they're braces, but when she first smiled, I was like, did they decide to just like smear her teeth with lipstick as like a character choice?
Other important characters in this film. Yes. Steve Elliott is in this somewhere. He's a band coach. And then Peggy Liddick is also in a scene at the very end. Peggy Liddick is in this as well.
I missed that entirely.
She is the coach of Megan Marsden's team, and she's sitting next to Megan. Yes. Shannon Miller's former coach, and then Australia, and now she's in England. So those are some other people that you might recognize or heard their names. Now let's talk about the the motorcycles and ATVs and the other character vehicles.
Yeah. Oh no, the vehicles are definitely like have a bigger part than most of the supporting actors. Like driving a Jeep to saxophone music is like has so much screen time. It's like basically the whole movie. There's so much. It's motorcycles, dirt bikes. We learned about that from the Mitch Gaylord Fluff piece that we talked about during something we did not that long ago. There was a lot of like him riding a motorcycle, so I feel like it was very important to have like a lot of motorcycles in the motorcycle chases and motorcycle making and welding, and that scene where he rides a motorcycle slowly down the ramp of that pier, which I think is supposed to look cool,
yes.
But it's like...
And then they don't show anything after he rides it down the pier to see his coach, who of course has a boat, because we know that all Eastern European coaches and all coaches go fishing and kill things. That is their hobby, obviously, so they all have a boat. And he rides his dirt bike down that pier, gets to the end of the pier, and then, he doesn't look so cool, so they can't show this anymore, because obviously he cannot turn that thing around. He's going to have to walk it backwards up the ramp like a dumbass. It was my favorite part.
Like this cool, like he's riding a motorcycle on the pier. It is the saddest, dorkiest thing in the entire movie, and I watched it at least 3 times. I
was like, you dumbass. Now you're stuck down there with a 600-pound motorcycle. You can't turn it around, and now you're going to have to walk it up there, and you just got your stupid cast off your hand, and it's going to hurt your wrist, and you're not going to be able to do a full in and call it a TRIFFUS. Okay, I'm so glad there was so much saxophone in here, because really, saxophones... they're my favorite thing that died with the 80s. And anytime I hear a saxophone, it makes me angry, because I did not enjoy the 80s.
I agree with you. Saxophone music makes me unhappy.
Yeah, I'm like, ew, go away. Nobody asked. It's like tap dance. I'm just like, no, you died for a reason. Like, it's boring as hell. No one wants to see tap dancing. Like, I understand it's hard, but...
like rings. I mean, I know it's hard.
I know it's really hard, but I don't want to watch it. Unless they're swinging. Also, the most important character in this movie, though, which we never get to see on screen, unfortunately, is it's baby oil.
We see a lot of baby oil.
We see baby oil. Baby oil actually is a character. Not the person that put the baby oil on, but just baby oil is the most important character in this. I actually wondered how they didn't all break out from being covered with baby oil for as long as it took to shoot this film. Which, based
on the quality, is like 3 days. I'm convinced.
I mean, there is like... No one has ever sweat so much doing gymnastics. There is a sheen on them from morning to night. Also, it's a super dry heat in Arizona, by the way. This isn't the Bahamas. Like, you don't get covered with sweat the way you do other places. Like, Kyla Ross carries around a towel because she sweats a lot, and she has never looked like anybody. Have you noticed her in her towel? She has never looked like anyone in this film. They definitely had, like, sponsored by baby oil. It's the only sponsor they didn't show in this. They had Capri Sun, or was it Ocean Spray?
Ocean Spray. Right. Sponsors the national championship.
Right, normal. And,
hey, USA Gymnastics would take that in a second right now if Ocean Spray
exactly.
were like, here's a scent.
Monster Energy Drink. Yes, sponsor us. They have, covered with baby oil, and then they're definitely spritzed for the sheen of the baby oil afterwards, too. But no one ever has pit stains. Did you notice that? I'm just saying. Okay, so before we go further, just a reminder that this podcast is brought to you by Club Gym Nerd members, and like our wonderful Club Gym Nerd husband, who dedicated this show to his wife for her birthday. So Club Gym Nerd members get discounts on merchandise, first dibs on live show tickets when the world opens again, behind the scenes episodes just for Club Gym Nerd members. Like this week we talked about, on the behind the scenes episode, we talked about kind of the economics of podcasting right now and what our sponsor situation is. We talked about how I went to hot yoga and was the most disgusting thing I have ever done in my life. Well, maybe that's not true, but like the second most disgusting place I've ever been in my entire life. It was so gross. And then we answered a ton of questions from you guys, including who we'd want to have to dinner. And if we could have any 5 gymnasts, and we came up with an amazing scenario for that dinner party. It involved diamonds and Nellie Kim and yes, and good behind the scenes stories too. We always tell a story that you have not heard or can't tell in public, basically. So members can do a mini segment or create your own Rageometer or commission an entire episode, and we even have group commissions back up, so you can do those. Like we're going to do Stick It, which is a group commission. If you have any trouble with your Club Gym Nerd membership, email customerservice@gymcastic.com. Customer service at gymcastic.com. If you want to join the club, it's under the Join the Club tab at GymCastic. You get access to our behind the scenes episodes. So thank you all so much.
Now that we've given sort of the general lay of the cast and things, I want to talk about just like the WTF-iest parts of this movie. Like, I would like it explained to me the scene where he walks into the house and opens the refrigerator and starts cracking raw eggs with his teeth and sucking on them and then throwing them behind himself. Okay. What is that, and why has this happened?
First of all, eating things straight out of the fridge is obviously an antisocial behavior, and we know he's the antisocialist of all the antisocials.
Okay.
And then it's also Rocky. Rocky drank raw eggs or swallowed raw eggs, and that then became a staple of like sportsman eat raw egg. And so yes, that's like totally a thing. It was in Rocky. So that's,
well, it was despicable and it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I understand. And then throwing them behind you, you don't care if your whole family gets salmonella, because clearly they've been letting you be abused by your father. So who cares what happens to them?
Also, the really good use of sound effects, because every time he throws one of the eggs behind him, like 17 vases shatter. It's wonderful.
I seriously was like, what? Is he breaking everything? What is with these sound effects?
There's so much like breaking things in this house off camera. Like every time you throw like a jacket or an egg or something, it's like clatter, break, clang. Also, there's a lot of like conversations in cars, in Jeeps, when there's not a saxophone and they're pretending to talk. It's all done in wide shot with a voiceover to make it really drive home the realism. You feel right like you're part of the action. And I feel like someone had some audio problems with this movie.
Like there's not a saxophone. Maybe that's why there was so much saxophone. They were supposed to be talking, and they were like, "No,
we can't use any of this. We have to come back and have them do every single line. They have to re-record later."
Speaking of audio, can we? Yeah. I know you have this later, but we have to talk about the grunt overs.
Oh,
they're not voiceovers. Really? No. They're grunt overs. Literally like, every single gymnastics. Like, and then I think about, wait, are all the movies like this? And this is why I was the way I was as a kid. Because I think I've told the story of how my first time going to like a real gym that had a real competitive team, like I ostracized myself by being the kid that made grunting sound effects every single skill that I did. And I'm like, is this where I got it from watching movies? Kung Fu theater? Is that how? So like, so they'll do a routine, male or female, doesn't matter. And it's, and I was like, wait, have we ever actually mic'd up a gymnast during a routine? Like, maybe this is what we sound like when we do these skills. Like, could there be this much grunting?
There's not this much grunting.
I think there's zero grunting. There's like one tiny grunt on your hardest skill, but not on your cartwheel, on a round off, on a dive roll, like everything.
There is every round off is like, it's hilarious.
It's the worst.
It's like a very much gymnastic movie kind of thing where they for some reason feel like we have to make sure we reinforce that this is hard. I feel like that with commentators too sometimes, where they're always saying things like, this might look easy, but I can assure you it's not. It's like, no one thought this was easy. Where did you get the idea that people are sitting there like, that's easy, I could do that? No one is saying that. You don't have to like come at it from a perspective of like, people think it's easy, but actually, no. You don't have to try to make it seem harder. It looks hard.
Because it is.
Because it's hard.
Excuse me.
I now would like to talk about a very important thing called the TRIFFUS.
The TRIFFUS, the other character besides baby oil.
Besides baby oil is the TRIFFUS, which is definitely a skill you do in men's gymnastics and not just in trampoline. We've decided that this is in men's artistic gymnastics high bar, that a TRIFFUS is a thing, and we've all agreed upon it. I don't know why they felt the need to just like throw in this. But anyway, everyone's always talking about the TRIFFUS, Jessica. And this is the dismount that Mitch is working on high bar, given his zero training that he has done in the last 6 months. So he tries just at the first competition, the tryout competition, to see whether he can return to training again. He attempts the TRIFFUS, and it is okay. The way they set this up, there is like a lot of dramatic music and shouting like, oh my God, and no, while he's doing giants. He does like 7 giants on high bar, and everyone's watching him do giants and going, no, I can't believe it. What? Good God. And it's like, these are giants. You don't know anything. And then he proceeds to do a full in. And then if you were watching this movie totally genuinely, you would see him do a full in, pause in midair, and then a camera cut to see him begin to travel sideways after stopping in midair into his assistant coach and killing him, ? As we see him like purpose him into a table of like judges or like baked goods or something at this meet. And then they roll over the assistant coach, and he is covered in a comical amount of blood. And you're like, oh, he just died from a full in.
He did a full in to murder.
A full in directly connected to murder. But then in the very next scene, we see him and he has like a single Band-Aid on his eyebrow. And it's like, how did this happen? You were dead a second ago. I thought this movie was just about to get good, and he killed his coach with a TRIFFUS.
Like, literally, he's doing a full in. Mm-hmm. He bails and opens. And it's so obvious he bails and opens.
And then does 100 more saltos in the air into his coach sideways.
It's amazing. It's the original Purvis, but with more blood. Much, much more blood. Like, his face is a horror movie, is what happened. Like, it's like, was I watching Gymnastics? What just happened? It's that much blood. It's like Freddy Krueger, Halloween, all mixed together. That's how much blood it is. His entire face.
And then he shows up and he's fine. And the other, like the female assistant coach is like rubbing his Band-Aid, and you're like, oh, something's going on between the two of them. And then that's never addressed at all. All we see of like Danielle, who other useless assistant coach, is the main guy is always like, Danielle will give you the choreography, and then end of scene, and she never gives anyone the choreography. And I'm like, Danielle, what are you even doing here?
Also, a TRIFFUS is a trampoline skill that exists. Yeah. That's a real thing, but it's a triple with a half. So, and I kept thinking, like, this is so clear.
Not what he's doing.
It's not a full out to bail on your back cutscene, land on, like, jump in the air and land in someone's arms, and they collapse into a table. Every time it's a full in. Every single time. This is the only part of this that's a terrible gymnastics cut.
They're trying to make it into, like, a full in, because we see him do, like, when he does it for real, we see him do, like, back tuck full and then another back tuck, so a full in, and then they cut and show another back tuck from a different day. So I think we're supposed to think it's a triple back with a full.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
They're trying to make it into, but it's not like Mitch Gaylord isn't like, I'll go do a triple back with a full, so they have to like create it from several dismounts.
And also, First of all, how many giant swings? We already covered that. Like
8.
Oh my God. And also he starts it with a piked stalter, an in-bar stalter. That is not how you know someone's about to go for a hard skill. Pike stalter. Oh, they're going to go for it.
During these giants.
And he literally, like, they're freaking out about the skill. He literally just did it perfectly fine in the woods. But we're all supposed to be scared now. He just did it in the woods.
I mean, that was the woods, Jessica. We should talk about his Zieracheslavska-inspired outdoor high bar woods gym.
Let's do it.
High bar in the middle of the forest between these, like, eucalyptus trees or something. And it's all very legitimate looking. And we see him, like, this is where he goes to think, but also do gymnastics. Like, in the rain, in the forest, by the light of Jeep lights. And then he keeps trying Tkachevs and falls. And it's like, maybe these Tkachevs are so bad because you're doing high bar between trees in the rain by the light of only a Jeep.
And
like,
also,
maybe that's why you're missing them.
And also, first of all, he was trying a lynch before the lynch was invented. Or a downy.
Was he? I wasn't really actually.
Tkachev half. Yeah, I was very paying attention. Please, Spencer, you know I know my skills. And then, he gets his grips. His grips aren't with him. He has buried them in dirty ass leaves in the forest, in some mud, some moldy ass. Nasty grips. So that's definitely safe. No wonder you fell down a hill and hit your head.
Which also, another thing, no one ever mentions that again. He falls on high bar in the rain, careens down a hill into a tree, and then just, like, walks away and starts having conversations about other things.
Right.
And no one talks about that again.
And not to mention, he falls onto his back perfectly safely, because you can tell every time he's just bailing on a full-in landing to land on his back. But somehow, then he's falling at 100 miles an hour forward rolls down a hill, even though he was fine. But, like, no wonder he's such a mess, because he's concussed for the whole rest of the movie.
Oh, that would explain a lot.
Safe sport.
We also have the gym where they train, which is, you know how, like, your gym has seating for 1,000 in this, like, basketball arena with just, like, a beam in the middle, that this is gym that they train in. I really enjoyed that.
They did thank Tops Gymnastics at the end of this.
Right. This is my question, because I'm like, was this actually what that looked like? Because there's, like, arena seating in this gym.
And I mean, some gyms do have arena seating, like Parkettes. When I was a kid and went to Parkettes camp in the 80s, they had seating that pulled out from the wall but it wasn't set up like that, but it was the collapsible kind in the walls so they can have meets and have tons of people. This was
like concrete, permanent.
Yes.
I'm fascinated if this is a real gym because it looks like the fakest gym.
Yeah, I don't think it's a real gym, but I do wonder. Because then I've been to places in like San Francisco, the Circus School. They had a bunch of gyms that look just like this, like basically where the seating is on the top level, like it is in Europe, like all those gyms in Germany and all those places. So anyway, I don't know, but it did look very fake.
This will be fascinating because it looks super fake. But I will also say in Full Out 2, which they shoot and in Oklahoma's actual training gym, that looks like it makes it look like the fakest gym because they've like cleaned it. So there's like no chalk has ever been in this room ever is how it looks like. And you're like, that's not real, but it's their actual gym.
This did look a lot like one of the gyms that I trained in, like I mean, they're all warehouses, but, or they're like the front of what are they called? Like a strip mall. It's like where a grocery store used to be. I trained in a lot of those too. So I feel like this could actually be a real gym.
It could be. This is shocking. It's
possible.
To me, but
yes.
I want to know more.
Okay.
Let's do the floor music storyline before we get to the domestic abuse because we have to talk about that.
The floor music situation is Spencer's new blog.
Yeah, basically. So there's a whole, I'm going to say maybe the most accurate part of this movie where there's a like sub story about her floor music where she shows up at this new gym after leaving New York, boo, and coming to Arizona, yay. And she shows up and the coach is like, here's this cassette tape of some nutcracker bullshit, and that's your floor music now. And I think it basically predicted when Bella Caroli changed Tasha's floor music at the 2000 training camp.
Yep.
When he was like, no, you have this music and you have to not do your cool routine, and you have to do this terrible child's routine that to someone else before. Here's a cassette tape. And I feel like that is 100% accurate. And the music that she has to like originally do her floor routine to is horrible. The problem is the cool music that she changes to is also horrible.
Well, it is horrible, but very cool for the 80s.
Oh, super cool for the 80s.
So cool. If it's a
also,
synthesizer.
I think Alabama still uses this floor music, by the way.
It would be awesome if someone actually did this floor routine now.
Oh, I'm sure they basically do.
Has anyone ever actually done this floor routine? I would like to know if anyone's
Someone on Twitter said they used her floor music from this movie as their floor music.
Well, I know the music, but the actual floor routine. Like with the body waves.
It's like, compared to the floor routines we see now, it's like 1,000 steps above.
Well, because Kathy Johnson choreographed her floor routine. Not the other ones, just Janet Jones.
The good one.
Right.
the cool one. With the dancing.
With the hair.
There is another character, Disabled Cousin, who we know is her cousin because she greets him by saying, hello, cousin. You know, like how you call your cousin, not like by their name. You say, hello, cousin, to tell everyone that that's your cousin. And he is a disabled character, so he exists to give everyone else perspective on their lives and just, like, live in a dark room helping the others. And he's like, has a scene where he's like, I was in a car accident that killed my parents, and I'm really screwed up about it. And everyone's like, haha, cool story, bye, shut up about that. We're not going to talk about that at all. Just like, all right, fine, get over it.
When she literally looks, like literally is in a dark room, she opens the light into the room, looks at him, looks back, like, ugh, disabled people, and shuts the blinds again so it's dark. Because if you're a disabled person, you're so supposed to be ashamed, you're supposed to live in the dark where no one can see you because you're like a terrible part of society, and you're bad and wrong and no good, and a ginger! They had to make him a ginger. Just to put the... I feel like they tried to make there was an 80s movie about a guy that had like a weird face deformation. And I think like Cher was in it, called Mask.
Yes. We had to watch that movie in my 7th grade English class, and I still don't really know why.
Oh my God. So I feel like
I don't understand the context, but I have seen that movie for that reason.
I felt like he was supposed to be like the Mask character. Like he was so... Yeah.
We should make a full list of all the movies they stole all the storylines here from.
Yes.
Because it's just everything is like sliced off a different movie and then like taped together with masking tape in a ball. And they were like, here's American Anthem.
But he's actually a super talented musician who's very good at what he does.
Which is pretending to play the keyboard.
Yes. And you can't play it. You have to have many, many, many keyboards set up to play. Because this is actually a music video, don't forget. Because even though one keyboard would do everything you need, like, literally he has 6 keyboards set up in a semicircle around him and plays them all at once. Because that's what was cool in the 80s.
And you know how you play keyboard is you just, like, mash all of the keys. That's how it goes. You just go ba 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 ba, and then it's keyboard.
And then you have to be backlit through your large ginger hair. It's the most important thing. Shall we move on to domestic abuse?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. So, as we discussed, his father broke his arm. And we see that in, like, a memory where Mitch Gaylord is standing there shirtless and glistening at the end of the hallway. And then the dad runs up and breaks his arm.
Sponsored by baby oil.
Sending really excellent messages. And then he, like, comes clean to Julie about this. Well, they're sitting in what I believe is the abandoned warehouse where his dad used to work. And you know how you take your girlfriend to your father's former place of employment, and that's like a date? So that was weird. And they talk about it, and he finally says, like, my dad broke my arm. And Julie's like, well, pull it together.
Right?
Get over it. Like, probably your fault for losing that football scholarship. I mean, what did you expect him to do? He's going to break your arm? Of course. Like, go to the gym.
Not an exaggeration. That's what actually happens in the movie.
Yeah, no, that's basically the scene. And then we don't see the, like, father domestic violence the mother in some, but that's just
assumed.
Implied. Because we see, like, more of these, like, Ming Dynasty vases are just broken all over the floor. And it's like, I thought you were supposed to be poor. How do you have all of this, like, antique porcelain that you could break all over the floor to indicate that some kind of domestic violence has happened, but it's just only told through shattered porcelain on the ground?
And also, they're definitely poor because she's the only one that has a job. So obviously, if the woman has a job, you're for sure poor.
If the woman has to work.
Oh, it's so embarrassing. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And also, they have a giant, like, ranch with 700 cars and motorcycles and all this other stuff. But they're definitely and a computer, by the way, which is not cheap.
1986.
A huge deal to have a computer. But they're very poor. It's very unfortunate.
And this house is, like, fine.
Right.
Like, I think you're supposed to think that, like, they're living in squalor, and I'm like, I'd move in.
Yeah, it's a totally nice house, lovely property. And this is the part where I feel like it's my personal, like, connection to this, that, like, obviously the Italians, they throw things, they've got those hot tempers, so and this has all been, like, passed on to, like, the, you know, whoever the latest scapegoat is. So now it's like the Latinos, the Latinx community, the Hispanics, like, they're the ones with the hot tempers, and they throw things and they don't stay together, and they domestic abuse, and it's like the bad hombres. Like, this is, like, where I read into how they're portraying this family with that last name. And it all coming from the dad. More racism. So still, at this point in the movie, no people of color.
Well, no, obviously. We've established that. I mean, are you kidding? There is also, so finally, like, after all of the vases are broken on the ground, Mitch yells to the father, like, get out of here, or something normal. And then the brother, there's a younger brother, by the way, who just exists to stand there reacting to things. He runs away and has, like, a motorcycle chase where Mitch has to chase after him. And the little boy, like, almost commits suicide. Like, he intentionally tries to drive himself off of a cliff because he wants them to be a family again. And then he's hanging off the cliff, you know, with, like, one arm, and Mitch has to pull him back. And then the moral of the story is the little child is like, you shouldn't have told dad to leave. And he's like, I'm sorry, you're right. I should have just gone and continued living there so that you could be a family again. Like, that's the end of the domestic violence storyline, is like, yeah, let's all be a family again. That's more important.
The nuclear family is more important to society than anything that happens to you personally. It's fine. Like, he could light you on fire. It's fine. Your family is the most important thing. Family first. Family, family, family. It's totally okay. Murder, whatever. Also, the little brother exists basically just to get PTSD. Like, that's all that's happening to him the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then I also have to say that this is a huge thing in the 80s, was falling off of cliffs. There was, like,
There's so much falling off.
So much falling off cliffs. And there was a whole movie based around Ricky Schroeder, who's a kid that had the show called Golden Spoons. I don't know, something with spoons. And then he's on TV now later. But there's a whole movie based on him and his family go to Australia in a RV. And he gets out
They drive from the United States to Australia by van?
All the way, which you can do. I don't know if you know that. So they go to Australia, and he gets out of the RV to, like, play, and they're just going to back up the RV right up next to this cliff. But oops, they've miscalculated, and the whole family dies falling off a cliff in the RV, and then he has to survive in the outback by himself with kangaroos. But luckily, he meets an old man, and there's a whole movie about it, which as you can see,
oh my God, we need to watch this together.
Traumatized me as a child. I had so many nightmares that my parents died on vacation in many different ways, like Bambi.
All right, next time we are allowed to be in the same place, we're watching that movie.
No!
Please.
No! I will not watch it! It's so horrible and traumatizing! Okay, let's move on to the big meat, sponsored by Ocean Spray.
Sponsored by National Championships, sponsored by Ocean Spray, which is the conclusion of the film. And I love that they do a whole backstory about, like, this is how we'll select the Worlds team. And it'll be 6 people, and it's in Rotterdam, and then we never address Worlds. Like, the end of the competition is National Championships.
Yes, that is it. But that's it. You've made the national team. You're back. But the thing that I like about this scene is that, first of all, again, like, we haven't gotten to all the sex. Okay, so first of all...
Oh, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's do that. That happens before the big meet.
Yeah, the thing I like about this is, like, there is not once in this movie is there a you can't have a boyfriend or anybody looks down on anybody else for having romantic relationships. At all, period. Like, as long as they're straight, obviously, because it's the 80s.
Yeah, that's
right. If you're not that pussy like so-and-so from blah, blah, blah team. But, like, there's none of that. There's a lot of making out. They're very short, which is unfortunate.
But there's definitely, like, PG-13 movie implied sex.
Yes,
where it's
there
like,
is.
There's, like, you know, dark kissing, and then we cut to, like, morning sheets.
Right. There's definitely sex. Sex is for sure happening. And there's even a scene where it's like Janet Jones has a negligee on, and it's blue backlit, you guys, so don't worry. You can tell it's the 80s. And then I was about to say Kirk Cameron. No, it's
basically.
Yeah. Steve Treveri. Mitch Gaylord is nude, and you can see his naked butt from, like, quarter up cheeks up.
You have implied butt.
You can see, like, most of his butt.
You have top of implied.
But what I like about this scene is that it is usually the woman, like, you have a million movies in the 80s where it's like all boobs and no part of any man is ever seen. And it's totally Mitch-sploitation and not, you know, exploiting the women, which is a nice change of pace.
She's, like, fully clothed all the time. There's no illusions about, like, who you're supposed to be lusting after in this movie.
Right, and in middle
That's
school,
probably why it didn't do well. They were like, oh, can't do that anymore.
They didn't market it enough to middle school girls and to the gay population, which is also who would have really appreciated this movie. So,
still does. Still exists. I'm having a great time.
So I just have to say that it's one of the only gymnastics movies that's really sex positive. I mean, even when we had Make It or Break It, like, are you kidding me? The first thing they do is have someone, the first scene in Make It or Break It is... which was a TV series that I'm sure everyone who listens to this show knows about, is someone having sex, unprotected sex, and then it being like a bad negative thing where it's like, oh, one person was used, and it wasn't just like 2 people who could have sex and enjoy themselves and be sex positive about it and that'd be fine. It was like a bad teenage decision, and now so-and-so used so-and-so and cheated, and now they're not talking, and sex is bad. And then you have a character who gets pregnant, and instead of talking about the implications of that, oh, you didn't use a condom, you didn't get on the pill, you didn't, like, protect yourself, you didn't blah, blah, blah. They just take her off the show. And the showrunner's reasoning for that was, well, that's what would happen in real life. And I'm like, no. Like, if you decided to keep the child, that's what would happen in real life. How many gymnasts do you think, how many college gymnasts especially do you think are not competing pregnant and have abortions during the season? I'm just saying. Or people that competed pregnant and had kids later, like the great... Why am I blanking her name?
Look at your whiteboard.
God damn it, I can't see it. I moved it. Latinina competed 5 months pregnant. Like, that isn't what actually happens. Like, there are many versions of pregnancy that can happen. So I was very disappointed by that. But so one of the things that I want to say about this movie is how sex positive it was. How the only thing that was missing from this, because it was the 80s, but people weren't terrified of AIDS yet in 86, at least not straight people, as they should have been. So the only thing that was missing was a safe sex message, but it's a really nice change of pace that we have not seen in any other gymnastics movie. And like, I feel like it's all Kathy Johnson. I'm going to give her credit for that. Thank you, Kathy.
It was very surprising that they didn't have any like, oh, you've had sex, now you can't win the national championship implications, or like she didn't like immediately like be pregnant after 1 second and then was like, I can't do nationals.
Right. That's the only thing that happens if you have sex. It's like the end of your life, of course, obviously. Right. So yeah, I appreciated that. But now we can go back to the big meet and I talk about this because before the meet starts, they have a little makeout session. Everyone's like, oh, they're back together. That's nice.
And everyone's like lurking, watching it.
Right.
Like your favorite character is literally like peeking around the corner watching them.
But I mean, who wouldn't? Let's be honest. That dirty ass, of course he's watching. It's his favorite thing.
In the various like intricate hallways of this arena before the meet, we suddenly learned that Becky Cameron has a serious knee injury that has never been mentioned or even implied once before. And now she's like, uh-oh, Becky's knee that everyone knows about. And it's like wrapped. And then the coach like pulls back the wrapping and looks horrified. It's like, what did you see? Like a bone sticking out? Like what is the implication that when he pulled back her knee wrapping and looked horrified? Like, girl obviously has a torn ACL and is still trying to compete on it. You didn't see like the torn ACL.
That was good times.
Yeah. So we're all very worried about Becky. Assistant coach Danielle is really worried about her knee, especially on her straddle back on bars. Like, that's the skill that they've used to be like, I'm really worried about her knee. We're not worried about it on her dismount. We're not worried about it on vault. We're worried about it on the straddle back. That's when it really gets you, as we all know about knee injuries.
This is where they missed the opportunity for comedy that Stick It would have embraced, which is, show her catching her knees on a straddle back, flinging herself cherry drop style around the bar and flying into something a la Mitch Gaylord and the TRIFFUS dismount. But they didn't do that. So, we missed the opportunity to be terrified during her bars.
Yeah, I also like that suddenly Cousin Disability, who his reactions to watching gymnastics is disturbingly sexual. Like all of his cheering, I'm like, I don't know what's happening here, and I don't want to know. He's also like really into Becky and really into like Jenny Rowland, even though he's never had any association with them before. He's suddenly acting like he is their family, cheering for them in these routines, even though like you just learned that they existed this moment.
So that's an unusual thing for a fan?
He's not a fan. He's never seen a gymnastics
He
before.
has just become a fan at the moment of watching gymnastics.
Yes, that is unusual.
No.
That is weird.
This is what happens to people. I feel like it is
terrible.
super creepy though. Like I feel like he was just acting and they were like, no more, no more, no more, no more. And then he was just like acting like complete bizarro the whole time. And they were like, yes, perfect. That's perfect. Act like you have been like given a shot of adrenaline right up your anus every time something happens. Jump out of your seat like, yes, nailed it. With a firecracker shot.
Yeah. On the subject of Becky Cameron, we have to talk about the scene. Becky Cameron floor routine, perhaps the most iconic part of this entire movie, where she is doing a floor routine on implied torn ACL. No one says that, but it's like, that's what we're all assuming.
Implied no ligaments, and her meniscus escaped out of that big hole in her knee that her coach saw. like a big flat worm. It just escaped.
So the best part, so she is like, basically she has like the worst floor routine you could ever have and falls a billion times and is on the ground crying. And then you're like, everyone gives her a standing ovation and it's really great that she fought through, and it's not like, maybe you shouldn't have done floor on your no ACL. But she does fall on both a straight jump and a side aerial. And it's truly wonderful. just the greatest, like, ask a gymnast to do a side aerial on floor and fall on it like she has never done in her entire life. And, like, hit, like, it's so gymnast, and it's, like, do a side aerial and then suddenly, like, collapse to your hands. It's the only way I can figure out to do this. And then be on the ground crying and no one does anything because it's not like she's injured or anything until they carry her off to a standing ovation and the PA announcer goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Becky Cameron." And then we all cheer because hooray, you did floor while injured.
She ended her whole season prematurely when she could have just petitioned onto the team. Everybody knows that because it's the 80s.
And her coach was the mean guy.
Right.
She had the right coach, so she definitely could have petitioned onto the team.
And the 80s were when people didn't come back from knee injuries. Like Achilles, like that was it.
Yeah, she's definitely done. Becky's never doing gymnastics again. That is a given.
Yeah, no, it's over.
Even if it was torn before, it was like she did like a straight jump full and fell on it.
Yeah. But let me just say the things that I like about this that we don't get in a lot of other movies. We actually see entire routines from multiple people, especially the women. Thank God it's not all the men's routines because they're so boring, but except Weiju's routines that are amazing. We get to see his floor. He's so much better. It's like when Kathy Johnson was talking about like how they used to say, oh, it's so unfair that the Russians win everything. And then she went to a meet and competed with them. Was like, no, they're actually that much better than us. Like, we're not even close. Weiju not winning this competition is the biggest joke of like the biggest farce of the entire movie. Like, it's so egregious. So egregious. And can I say, just a little racist, the white guy has to win? Like, clearly Weiju was robbed because even the mistake he makes on high bar, which is basically I'm trying to remember now. He does the over the bar thing that I can never remember the name of, where they go boop forwards and then bloop. Mm-hmm. It's like a Horkina, but or a Markelov, but is it a Markelov? I think it's Markelov what he does. Anyway, it is so high. His form is so beautiful. It's so perfect. And then he does a nice little straddle in the middle. It looks like an accent, but they make it like that was an error because the gymnastics is so good. He does his side flip, side roll out on floor. Like, it's so amazing. And then Mitch Gaylord gets up and does like his, nice Arabian dive roll and his double back to a very, very, very deep squat and his head spring, which is cool. But you're like, oh my God, like home slice from Boston College over here, Weiju is kicking all of your asses.
Oh yeah, the fake colleges are really fun.
Oh my God, I love the fake colleges. So anyway. I just have to talk about that. But anyway, let's talk about Megan Marsden, who was Megan Marsden at the time.
Similarly robbed.
I agree.
From the competition because Dancer McGee wins the meet and it's like, you did nothing. And Megan Marsden competes in this meet portraying the role of Jo Ellen, the Flash Carter, and the PA guy introduces her by nickname. It's the most wonderful thing. He's like, Jo Ellen Carter, the Flash. And the idea of Megan Marsden be given the nickname the Flash is like, that should be our entire podcast. We should have not talked about anything else and just talked about that because it's my favorite thing that there has ever been.
It is my dream for everyone to be introduced by their nicknames like they do with fighters. And why haven't we achieved this yet when they were trying to do it in the 80s? We need to keep that.
The idea of coming up with a nickname for a gymnast, any gymnast, and it's being like, the Flash, that's what you call like a sprinter or something. Like, there's no gymnast who I would be like, what's an appropriate nickname for you? The Flash.
I agree.
Even Simone is not the Flash. It's like, here's Megan Marsden standing here on beam. Ooh, the Flash has really got it going today. But anyway, she was obviously the best gymnast in this competition, and she got hosed, and I want to file a protest, and I think the only explanation is that Greg didn't bribe the judges enough, because she should have won. And I'm, like, mad about her not winning the competition because she did like perfect routines on every single event. And Dancer McGee is like, let me wiggle on the beam. And then they're like, you're the champion. I'm mad. I'm not happy.
The thing that I love about Dancer McGee winning is that it's another part of this movie where it's like, you're supposed to fit into a box. You're supposed to just be this little girl and not be a woman who's having sex. You're supposed to be, what the judges want you to be. And she's like, no, I need to be my most authentic self. And so she does, at the last second, changes her floor music and does her, music that her weird cousin, who should be ashamed of himself for something that's not his fault at all and is actually very talented and wonderful, has made for her. And then, owns the moment. And even her coach is supporting her at the end because he sees that she was right all along. It is a very athlete first, listen to your athletes, listen to women moment that I don't feel like is acknowledged enough. And so,
this movie is not a gymnastics movie. That's it's like there's a lot of gymnastics, but it's not, it's a teen movie made with those priorities. So they're like, of course they're going to be like all having sex and doing the cool fun thing because they're not trying to like reinforce the gymnastics social order.
It's fantastic, and I totally love that part of it.
Also,
and of course, the backwards body wave. Hey!
Also in this meet, I do need to mention, the rotation order is bars, beam, vault, and floor, and that just goes unaddressed, and we need to talk about that because it gave me a panic attack, basically. Also, after all of this, like, thing with the parents... And then the last thing Mitch says to his mom is like, I've decided to go compete at World's Trials. You know how you decide that the day of? And I hope you can make it. And she's like, I'll be there. And then she doesn't come.
Doesn't show up.
And it's not like, that's not a scene like, oh my God, I can't believe she didn't show. It's just like that. Yeah, we forgot that we said that. And she doesn't show. And she's like at home listening to it on the radio, I think.
And, little brother, PTSD little brother falling off the cliff, has to depend on the motorcycle gang, which he got jumped into earlier in the movie on his three-wheeler. He has to depend on the motorcycle gang to bring him to the meet because neither of his parents will. My God.
I know. I have like lots of problems with that.
I feel like the other theme of this movie was that three-wheelers are very dangerous. That was another theme of the 80s, which people have not seemed to adhere to because people still ride them. Like, oh, and can we just talk about the fact that how, like, in real life, I just want to revisit vehicles. The other important character next to Baby Oil is that there's this, false idea that gymnasts can't go skiing or have boyfriends. Women's gymnasts. But in real life, like, all the male gymnasts have motorcycles. And it's also true in this movie. Sexism.
Everyone, yes.
You thought I wasn't going to bring that up, but I did. There you go.
I know. I believe you. In you. I know that you can do that. Is there anything else we need to talk about? We've almost reached the running time of the film, which I said was way too long in talking about the movie, because there's just so much to make fun of.
Yeah, the very end, he does the TRIFFUS, and again, it's like, it's the most obvious cut of when he does a full in, and then just basically like Spider-Man, like he does like a squirrel that flies backwards, like a cat that's not gonna, what does this, and falls on its back. I'm making a star, he starfishes to his back, and then all of a sudden they cut to him doing a flip and landing on his feet, and everyone's for it. And it's like, he listened to himself, and he didn't do any rehab or strength, and that's all you have to do in gymnastics. Just
he worked
show
in the
up.
Sparks factory. That's all you need to do.
Sparks factory.
And he like did one push-up on like a beam in factory and was like, I can come back to gymnastics. Yes. Pull up, not push up.
I think that is everything. Oh, except that at the very end, at this competition, is we see the first black person, and then there's another when they have the national team, women and men out on the floor at the same time, national team, which I liked.
And on the podium. They don't even get their own podium. They have to like stand on the same rung.
I like it.
Which is weird.
And so the moral of this story is, if you have a happy sex life, you can do anything, like win gymnastics meets without doing any work. Is that what you got out of it?
Movie. But I got that like domestic violence makes you good at gymnastics. I think that's what I got out of this movie.
Oh, good times.
And going to like Jeep parties will help give you like the motivation you need to return to the gym.
Jeep parties all the way. Also, having a vehicle without a top is the other. A motorcycle, an ATV, a little bug that has a roll top, or a Jeep. Yes. If you can roll the vehicle and lose a limb, that is how you are sure to be a great gymnast. Amputation possibilities. Okay, you guys.
We'll see you on Friday for Behind the Scenes. Thanks for listening.